Some seek a passive retreat from the coming cataclysm. Others prepare to meet disaster head on. These are not U.S. infantrymen. They are soldiers of God, rehearsing for their self-ordained role in maintaining order in the chaotic world to come.
So yes, really the reason why the people on January 6th were marching on the Capitol was because of the group called the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord, who had training camps in the forest in 1978. Everyone's thinking when you're watching this. Wolverines! Because that's what it is, right? It is a bunch of right-wing people, preppers that set up training camp in the forest. But that's fine. The government doesn't take too kindly to that. So let's see how we got from this to the federal government surrounding their compound, saying they're going to murder every child inside with 50 caliber machine guns.
They number more than 100, and with their families have established the community of Zarephath Horeb, a crude settlement hidden in the backwoods of the Ozarks.
All right. So it was 1978. They bought some land. They brought their families. I think it started out as 8 different families at the time. They set up like a mock town to where they could do the training, and they basically did SWAT training like all the time. They made their money by doing like gunsmithing and stuff like that, selling weapons. Again, this is it was way more legal back then. You didn't have the 90s is when a lot of gun control shit went down under Clinton. So you had they were doing a lot of also training, like seminars, like you could send or you could show up. Well, I don't know, you can just show up, but like they would do training, like you could join their, SWAT training for like a week or whatever and pay for that. But they all had families. They were all Christians. They had a church. They were self-sufficient. They had over a year's supply of food and water. And they were convinced that things were already getting bad. Again, no one's asking themselves in this whole thing, you know what? This shit's going to not end well. This doesn't look like it's sustainable. This doesn't even look good now. And there's going to be some quotes from this guy from like 82 that's going to, and it's 40 years ago he's saying this, and you're just like, oh God, if only he could see how bad it is now. We're so desensitized. But they looked around and they said, this is bad. You know what would be better than this? You know what would be better than living in these cities that used to be what would draw people out of the rural areas? They used to be these places of prosperity. The people in the rural areas would flock to. And now people were looking around and going, oh, this is kind of shit. I kind of want to go back to the rural area and maybe grow my own food. Like even the food's starting to look bad for me. They never once in this entire entire 6 episodes, they never asked like, why did white people suddenly
have come together a little bit at a time over the last 10 or 12 years. I was born in Illinois, and I lived in Texas for several years, and then in the late 60s, God began to deal with us about the economic judgment, collapse, and upheaval that was coming upon all the world, and especially on this country. And he began to deal with us in the church that I was part of at that time down there to get out of the city, out of the big city.
Jim Ellison has formed the Zarafats into a self-sufficient army to protect themselves against the hordes they feel will be fleeing the collapsing cities. There's no doubt about the seriousness of their military training. As they would say, they play it for real. Guards on the gate, men and most women armed all the time, and even children trained to shoot from 12 years old.
So this is from a documentary the BBC did, which is kind of funny because if you look at the whole documentary, it's called The Survivalists, and it's from this compound. They visit a bunch of Americans having guns and stuff. Look at these.
We have food sufficient for at least a year and possibly more, depending on how many people we would take in. And we have water stored. This is your 2 basic things that you must have if you're trying to prepare for even temporary emergency. And of course, since we are not pacifists, we have weapons to protect what we have.
So they do all kinds of training. They do like snow training, and they even train like the women. But the women seem like they understand gender roles. Actually, it's kind of funny. Like this girl, they show her like shooting, and she's like, "Well, I expect the men to take care of me, but I still think that like if there's something, a problem, I should be able to. I know how to use a gun and stuff."
Weapons are more plentiful than money here. A large part of the Zarafats' income is made in the weapons trade, and from paramilitary training seminars they give to other survivalists all over the United States.
What do you say to the people around here who might feel that you people are crazies?
They thought Jesus was crazy too. So if he can do it, we can do it. He's our example.
So it's not just military training. They also have like homeschooling. They have, gardening and all that stuff. But they do the Wolverines training.
I don't like to set dates, but it's feeling kind of spooky. And it might be tomorrow or sometime in 82. But it could last another 10 years, but I don't think so. The Bible says it's going to wax worse and worse. And when you go into these big cities, and there's streets that you can't walk down without being thumped, you know it's getting bad. When
See, I just want to point out, he thought in 82. He thought in 82, way before trans kids, that shit was getting too bad. In 82. Now, the Immigration Act.
Feeling kind of spooky. And it might be tomorrow or sometime in 82. But it could last another 10 years, but I don't think so. The Bible says it's going to wax worse and worse. And when you go into these big cities, and there's streets that you can't walk down without being thumped, you know it's getting bad. When homosexuality is in open view and not hidden anymore, you know it's getting bad. When witchcraft and communism is everywhere, you know it's getting bad.
When witchcraft and communism is in open view, you know it's getting bad. Yeah, well, all that stuff is much worse. But yeah, I mean, they had families. I mean, aside from like the fatigues and the guns and stuff, it looked relatively nice and wholesome and everything. They had like proper school set up and everything like that. The kids all looked pretty normal and happy. But then, according to, so now we're going to go back to the documentary for just like a second. Then we'll have to go right back to stuff I had to find because they don't. So they don't tell you any of that stuff. In the propaganda piece, they just say bunch of crazy military guys in the forest, and they're gearing up for end times, right? And the thing that pushes them over the edge is this guy right here. Now, if you don't know what this guy is, don't feel too bad. I didn't know who he was. His name is Gordon Kahl. Kahl. Gordon Kahl. Now, according to the propaganda piece, Gordon Kahl was this outlaw tax evader who killed some U.S. Marshals and was and died while they were trying to arrest him. And the militant right wing at the time, which, by the way, remember what I was saying that? Well, again, you're gonna have to watch part 1 part 2 and part 3 of this, because this is a long story to tell. Right now, the part of the story that we're in isn't it crazy how in the early 80s, all throughout the 90s, we had right wing, whether you think they're cringe or not, you had fully militarized right wing groups in compounds training. Not just like 1 or 2. You had a lot. You had a lot of this. Okay? You're going to want to watch episode 2. Because Oklahoma City and Joe Biden, believe it or not, changed. I'm telling you, it's the same. It's literally the same people. It's the same people. It's insane how many of the people are the same people. But anyway, this guy right here, they just mention him. They're like, oh yes, and then this guy, he was an asshole that got killed by the federal government, and so all the right wing went crazy. So I started researching this guy. He was a World War II war hero. He got the Silver Star, 4 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Air Medals, Presidential Unit Citation. Was like 9 Battle Stars. I mean, the guy was like, he wasn't like a lightweight. And when he got back from World War II, he noticed that there was a whole bunch of social programs that he didn't like. He also began to believe that Roosevelt knew that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor in advance. And, he told his boss. And his boss respected him so much, his boss said, well, you might be right. And it ate him up inside. He told his wife that all of the killing and all the death that he experienced in the South Pacific didn't have to happen, because that's where he was fighting. He was fighting in that theater. And then the federal government wanted to pay him. There was a farm program where they would subsidize his crops, but he had to grow what they wanted him to grow. And he didn't want to grow what they wanted him to grow. So he ended up getting in some a relatively quickly resolved argument with the federal government over that, where he was refusing the subsidies and eventually was allowed to grow what he wanted to grow. Which is a good thing, because they had a bumper crop And in 1 year, he was able to pay off his farm. So now he was self-sufficient. And because he was self-sufficient, and because he didn't agree with the welfare programs, and because he didn't like the direction that the country was going in, he decided he wasn't going to pay Social Security. He was going to opt out of Social Security. He was going to opt out of federal taxes. And he didn't really make any money. I mean, he made all of his own food. He had 6 kids, but he grew all their own food, and he made basically below the poverty line. So he didn't really have to pay taxes anyway, other than Social Security, but he didn't want to pay that. So he started filling out W-4s instead of W-2s, so he wouldn't have to they wouldn't take it out of his check, basically. And he stopped paying it. And then he started promoting to other people, saying, that you shouldn't pay it. And then psychos at the IRS, again, this guy wouldn't really owe any money. Like he was making less than the he was making less than it was like $9,000 a year, right? And the poverty line was something like, at that time I think it was like 12,000. So he was like making below what you need to pay taxes anyway. He just didn't want to pay the Social Security crap, which would have been pretty small. But because he went on TV, like on some public access thing, telling people what he did, the IRS freaked the fuck out. And again, this woman, there's just something unsettling about her.
Around the time that Gordon Kahl went on television and subsequently was holding these seminars in West Texas, almost 200 workers went to their employers and filed W-4 exemption forms, which precluded their employers from withholding their own income taxes. Thus, 200 former compliant, law-abiding taxpayers placed themselves in enormous fiscal endangerment that they would not have had enough paid in to cover their own taxes, and had some problems ahead of them. And I was concerned about that because when any one of us reneges on our responsibility to pay our fair share, that means all the rest of us that are complying have to pull a heavier load. Indeed, this is one of the ways that Internal Revenue Service and other government agencies select cases that we recommend for prosecution, that they serve as an example and also as deterrence.
So that scary lady said that they were very upset because 200 people, oh my God, 200 people changed their filing status. So they said that they were exempt, so they wouldn't get the taxes automatically removed from their paycheck. So the IRS freaked out and decided to make him an example, in her words, and referred him for a prosecution as an example and a deterrent.
He probably did not have enough income to have owed any tax for those years. If there had been any, it would have been something really minimal.
But it didn't matter. They sent him to Leavenworth. He went to prison. And when he got out, he was so pissed off that he said he's definitely not going to do it now.
They wanted me to fill out income tax papers, and I told them nothing doing. I would never fill out another one as long as I lived.
Gordon had told me so many times.
So that's his wife. That was a recording of him saying, he's never going to fill out an income tax form as long as he lives.
And he had told federal agents 3 different times when they came out to the farm, he said, now I want to be left alone. He said, I'm not giving government anything, I'm not taking anything from government, we're self-sustaining, and he said, I want me and my family to be out of the system and to be left alone. He said, I'll never go after you. But he said, if you ever come after me, I'll never back off.
So what happens is the IRS gives this to the U.S. Marshal Service. And the local U.S. Marshal is like, this is stupid. I'm not going to waste my time with this. We're not going to go after this guy. And because he wasn't going after this guy, they replaced him with a guy that would. And you could look, that IRS woman that was really fucking creepy. This guy, look at the glee in his eyes. He's just like, oh yeah, we got to get this guy.
I think there was a sense there that hey, if you're going to willfully break the law and go public with it and flaunt it and brag about it, that, you need to pay the price.
Yeah, see that? You fuck with the bull, you get the horns. Now again, look. Obviously, this is if that's what you're gonna do, if you're gonna do what he did, you have to be prepared for psycho federal government employees who get big fucking hard-ons for being able to wield power. Anything that puts them in a position where they're dominating someone else because they don't get it to do it in their personal life or really anywhere else. But once they clock in, that's all they're looking for is opportunities to dominate other people. You can see it in that fucking child molester's eyes right there on the screen. He is so, nothing gets him harder than fucking someone over nothing. Over some kind of technicality. So you got to be prepared. If you're going to do that, that's what you're up against. And that's what he was up against. So after they changed the marshals on him, they let's see what this next clip is. His neighbors, look, everyone in the town liked him. He wasn't a nuisance. His neighbor, this is his neighbor, went down to the IRS office and was just like, look, I don't want you guys fucking with him anymore. I'll just pay the bill. Just tell me what it is. Tell me, because I know it's not much. Just tell me what it is and I'll pay it.
They aren't the nicest bunch in the world. The IRS. Anyhow, we were down there in the office, and so finally I said, okay, how much does Gordon owe you people? Or we want to know, we're going to pay this thing. And they wouldn't give me any answer. They says, we don't know. I says, well, what are you after them for? I says, let's get it over with. No, they couldn't do it. We'll let you know. But they never did let us know.
So they won't let the neighbor pay the bill. They never get back to him. Instead, they decide to just auction off Gordon's property. So the U.S. Marshals go down there to do a property auction, but the community is so pissed off at what's going on, no one bids on it. People liked him. He was like a guy that everyone liked, as you'll see even further. So this pissed him off even more, and they decide they're going to arrest him. And he's starting to get paranoid at this point. And so when he does leave his house, he and his family leave the house armed because he genuinely thinks that this new marshal guy who's got a hate boner for him wants to kill him. And he told all his friends, like, look, they don't want to arrest me. They want to kill me. Like, they're pissed off that I'm not playing the game, and they want to kill me. So one day, the family goes out, and they bring their guns as they always do. And when they're coming home, they see a roadblock has been set up. And so they freak out. They turn around. What they don't realize is they're also being followed by a cop. And they basically get into a shootout. One of the U.S. Marshals shoots his son. He returns fire, kills, I think, 2 of the U.S. Marshals. And escapes, goes on the run.
Immediately, the news media labeled him as a neo-Nazi,
right-wing paramilitary extremists.
Posse Comitatus.
They are vigilantes who call themselves Posse Comitatus.
Call's view of the world was a blend of religious zealotry and political extremism that merged into a twilight zone of fanaticism. Strange, disturbed man.
And a violent person, and just be real careful when he was around.
Critics describe the posse as neo-Nazi racists bent on anarchy.
Authorities say the prime suspect is a radical survivalist, a fanatic, an ultra-right-wing tax rebel.
The government went with their little propaganda campaign, and then the judge very conveniently issued a gag order on us, so we couldn't tell our side of the story.
They was going to kill him. They put out the word that he had to come in as a body, not as a prisoner. And so, what could I do? I was justified in keeping him there.
Boil it all down, and what kind of people?
So, people were willing to harbor. This is how well liked he was. He shot and killed 2 U.S. Marshals, and people were willing to harbor him. Like, his neighbors were hiding him. So they keep looking for him. The FBI keeps looking for him.
Are they? They're dangerous people. Extremely dangerous people. They're well armed and they know how to use their weapons, and they have avowed that they're going to resist this.
Well, they treated him like he was a killer. And Gordon, he was no killer. And I used to tell him that. They'd call him this killer. Would you report this killer if he came to your home? I said, no, I'd help him.
That's another one of his neighbors, this old lady. Will you report this killer if he comes to your house? No, I'll help him. Because people knew that he wasn't like some asshole. He was like a good guy that everyone liked.
And I'd always say, quit calling him a killer.
Oh, a couple of state troopers and...
But they finally killed him. So he basically had a standoff with them, with the state troopers and with the sheriff's office. He hunkered down inside of a house of another old couple that were willing to help him, that were, that knew what he had done and everything, and were willing to help him. And they shot tear gas into the building, and they climbed up on the roof and poured diesel fuel into an air vent and burned the fucking house down. And killed them inside. And look, it's hard to find all the details about that because there's other accusations and stuff like that. But the feds denied doing any of the, pouring gasoline into the house. But this is the guy who did it.
Myself was standing over under some trees all this time waiting for the FBI to decide what they wanted to do. When they finally came up with what they wanted to do, they wanted to try to put diesel. Well, they wanted to put gas. And we decided against gas because it allowed to blow up my face. Put diesel down the vent pipe. Let the diesel run out down into the vent pipe. Well, during this time, it was smoke already coming out of the front of the windows that was broke out in front of the house. Some say they couldn't tell where it was, fire smoke or where it was tear gas because it'd been a world of tear gas already put in it. Well, anyway, the diesel ran down in there, and then Hulse and myself went back up on the roof, and I guess I probably put 3 or 4 grenades down in it, and I think Hulse put about the same amount down in behind the diesel. But
they threw grenades down the vent after they poured like 5 gallons of diesel gasoline into the house.
Wasn't just a few minutes we had a pretty good fire.
Yeah. The federal government denied physically using the accelerants. And in fact, it was not a federal agent who physically poured the accelerant in the air vent. Is the reason that I think they changed their story to the extent that they were willing to accept the responsibility. I don't think it was ever admitted to that a government agent as such physically participated in the use.
We can't allow these type of crimes, homicide, assassination, actually executions of individuals in the community, and have it covered up. If we start on that course, where would we end?
Well, we'll find out, because we're about to cover much worse than what happened to this guy. I told you it's going to be a long one. We still have a lot more to go. Rhymes with Mooby Schmidge is coming up.
He got Gordon, shot him in the back of the head and butchered him, burned him beyond recognition.
So what does this cunt have to say? The cunt at the IRS at the very end of all this? And by the way, she's saying this after this guy's been burned to death, the U.S. Marshals are dead, all this other stuff.
We view the Internal Revenue Service as part of the solution instead of part of the problem of our country.
And the Air Force doesn't even give him military burial honors at the end of it.